It's always good to get a differing perspective because when I challenge what I believe, often I change a viewpoint based upon better arguments. A woman that may have those better arguments is Jamila Bey. She spent a lot of time with NPR, where she worked on shows like Talk of the Nation, Morning Edition, and All Things Considered. Jamila Bey, who's now the communications director for the Secular Student Alliance. Jamila Bey, welcome to the Bill Cunningham Show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Talk to me about your reaction to the Supreme Court decision yesterday, especially in Hobby Lobby. Good, bad, or something in between?
Oh, it's horrible. It is absolutely horrible. First and foremost, what this did is this ruling says if you are religious and you employ people, your religion can be expressed through the way health care is decided at your company. People yesterday were saying, no, this looks at 4 out of the 20 types of contraception that the Affordable Care Act mandates coverage for. But today, we already see this isn't the case. Already, because of that ruling yesterday, there are other companies who get their formerly thrown out cases. Those cases get to be appealed. Companies that say, we don't want to offer any birth control. We believe that children are quivers in the arrow and we should be fruitful and multiply. If someone wants to work at my company, I shouldn't have to cover anything at all that could impede someone's fertility. Now, everybody's looking at contraception. But here's something else you need to consider, Bill. These companies now get to say, I don't believe that anything that could make a person less fertile is something that my insurance could cover. Do you know anybody who's ever had to be treated for cancer?
Well, Jamila, let me give you my perspective on this. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court is governed by the United States Constitution. It is not a public policy debate as to what the Constitution says, nor is it a popular vote as to what the Constitution says. The popular vote doesn't matter. The Constitution says the Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
My friend, you're okay. Here's the problem with that. If my religion tells me that women are unclean and are not to be seen during their menses every month, and I work for you, okay, and I say, Bill, I know I'm your producer and I've got to get your show on the air and I've got to get your guests ready, but I'm unclean right now and you can't fire me because between 7 to 9 days every month, I just ain't coming to work.
Well, Jamila, this is why that argument is ridiculous.
Why is that argument ridiculous?
Samuel Alito also said there must be a very clear balancing test as far as the rights of the employer of closely held family businesses to practice their religion weighed against the interests of the employee. It would be absurd to say that if you're a Mennonite or a Jehovah's Witness that doesn't like kidney transplants, those things would be thrown out because of the balancing test. In this one case, the fines against Hobby Lobby would be hundreds of millions of dollars for not covering 4 of the 20 birth control, and the cost to the female employee will be paid for by the government. There's a least restrictive test applied, and the least restrictive means to allow the employer to practice a firmly held religious belief is to have the government pay for these services, just as the government pays for the services of employees of Catholic charities. And so on this one case, it wasn't about menses and it wasn't about kidney transplants. It was about this one case where they covered 16 of the 20, and the fines against Hobby Lobby were literally hundreds of millions of dollars on one hand, as opposed to the least restrictive means, which would have been the government paying for those services. That's why your argument is ridiculous.
Well, that is a cogent argument, my friend, that is actually wrong. Let me tell you why.
You're arguing with Samuel Alito in the Supreme Court, not with me, but go ahead.
Okay, and I will. And all 3 female justices on the Supreme Court also argued with Samuel Alito. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in her 35-page dissent, also argued with Samuel Alito and said, here's the thing. We American citizens, even those of us who do not possess, male organs, I guess you would call us women citizens, we have an undue burden. We are not provided equally as this ruling applies to us. The fact that even after the gap you're talking about, well, if the employer who you're already paying into an insurance plan and your employer chooses to not permit you because of his or her strongly held religious conviction, to not get the medical care that your doctor provides, the burden on female employees is greater. Some women might be able to choose their place of employment considering health care restrictions or whatnot, but because of economic restrictions, because of geography, that is not possible for all women. And that's not something that's a burden that male employees have to consider. That makes it unequal under the law. That is a problem. You cannot say, women go to work for places, but we've made it such that you don't get the standard of health care for 90% of the companies in this country. Let me be real. We're not talking about only Hobby Lobby. We're not only talking about the furniture making company. A closely held company is one that has five owners or co-owners or whatnot, and they have a religious feeling or tradition or belief or practice, whatever you want to call it. 90% of the companies in this country fall under that restriction of being closely held. We already see today, because of this ruling yesterday, there were a number of companies that said, we don't want to offer any birth control at all, period. The Supreme Court's ruling means that those cases that had been previously thrown out,
they got to be litigated.
Now have to go back to, now they have to go be litigated again. Well,
Jamila, let me ask you this.
Jamila,
if the government would say, as ACA and Obamacare, Health and Human Services have said to Catholic charities, we're going to cover those. If the government, Obama could announce today or tomorrow, guess what? Health and Human Services will cover and pay for, at no cost to the woman, those additional services. Are you okay with that?
No, I'm not.
Oh, why not?
Because if I'm already paying into an employer-sponsored program that covers health care that is determined by my physician, I don't want the guy who cuts my check determining my health care. There is an issue of privacy that is involved here. If my doctor says, there's a condition you have that requires you to take birth control pills, I'm going to prescribe it for you. If I have a medical condition that says, Jamila, in order to stay alive, you need to take this drug, and this drug will probably not be very good for any child you conceive, you should not get pregnant. You should never get pregnant if you're going to take a drug to save your life. And I go, well, the standard of care in the U.S. and around the world is an IUD or is some kind of long-form contraception, is sterilization. I'm already paying into a program. It's none of my boss's concern why my doctor prescribes a particular
Jamila,
thing.
if that argument is valid, does that mean that when Obama last year said that women who work for Catholic charities, we will cover abortion for women and other reproductive services for the female employees working for Catholic charities because that is against their deeply held belief? Your argument says the University of Notre Dame, Xavier, Mount Notre Dame High School, in other words, the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Duquesne University of the Holy Spirit, where I am an alumni,
they got to pay?
where I work.
Are you saying they got to pay for abortion?
I'm saying that.
Yes or no? Do they have to pay? Because your argument...
They were already... A lot of these places were already exempted. This is a red herring argument for the fact
why not exempt under Hobby Lobby the same thing? Why not give the same exemption?
Because they were already exempt, Bill. You are muddying the water.
No, I'm taking your argument to its conclusion. Why not have the same exemption for Hobby Lobby that you give to Notre Dame University? Do the same thing.
Notre Dame didn't have to pay for abortions before the ACA.
No, they did. They did when it passed, and then there was given an exemption. They had to do it, and then Obama got a lot of blowback from Catholic institutions and Muslim institutions and Jewish institutions. Then later on, Kathleen Sebelius gave an exemption.
No. That is not the case. Abortions were already restricted on which health care plans had to pay for them. This goes back to under Bill Clinton, when there were all of these international organizations that got funding from the U.S. that all of a sudden were unable to do a full range of comprehensive health care, including abortions or whatnot. And the issue here is that particular exemption, the abortion exemption, already existed. Already. These are people, Notre Dame, you pulled them out. Let's talk about your friend Notre Dame. They were already providing birth control programming, not programming, birth control under their health care plan. The Affordable Care Act goes into effect. They look at it and go, we've been providing birth control to all of these women. Let us fight and try and get an exemption from that. They were already not paying for abortions. That is not at all what was going on.
Well, Hobby Lobby wants to be in the same category as Notre Dame. What's wrong with that?
Because Hobby Lobby buying their craft supplies from China with its one-child policy, aside from the hypocrisy of that, Hobby Lobby ain't a church. It's not a school of a school.
Well, Jamila, from my perspective, the Green family are not official ministers, but the government is prohibiting the free exercise of their religion. The balancing test comes in. Is it okay with you if Hobby Lobby lost this case, they would have been fined hundreds of millions of dollars by Obama and thrust out of business? Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely not. Here's the thing. If your deeply held religious conviction is so deeply held that you can't follow the law in the country you want to operate your business
No, they followed the law. They followed the law by going to the Supreme Court. Why don't you follow the law? Because the Supreme Court said Hobby Lobby is following the law, and you're not following the law. They followed the law.
Hold on. How am I not following the law?
Because you're saying that a Supreme Court decision, which is now the law of the land, should not be followed. I'm saying Hobby Lobby followed the law of the land. They went to court, and they won, acknowledged the victory, and let's move on.
There were a whole lot of people that said the same thing about the Dred Scott decision.
Oh, my God. This is not exactly human slavery when a woman has to pay $20 for a Plan B pill. That's not, and the government will pay for it. No, are you comparing the Plan B pill to slavery? Are you really doing that?
That's not what I said at all.
You said Dred Scott 1857 was slavery. Are you comparing slavery to Plan B?
You will absolutely not say that I said that.
You just said that. You said you compared it to the Dred Scott decision, not me.
So you have the mic. You can scream over me all you want, but you were still wrong. What I said was, you said it's the Supreme Court decision. Let it stand. It's the law of the land. I said Dred Scott was also a Supreme Court decision. Which was
slavery.
That's what I said. Yes, it was. Yes,
that's slavery.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that just like the 3 female justices on this court, in this Roberts court, who disagree, just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who wrote that 35-page dissent, I am saying this is an undue burden on women.
No, it's not. It is not. Let me tell you what, Jamila. The government will pay for. The government will pay for it.
No, it will not.
Well, let me say this. Obama today could order HHS to pay for this, and he won't do it because he wants the issue and doesn't want to solve a problem.
Well, I can't purport to speak for the motivation of our president, who's the president.
I know the motivation. I know the motivation.
You have some insight that I admittedly do
Correct,
not.
I do.
I do not know the mind and the heart and the motivation of a Harvard-trained constitutional scholar.
Then this constitutional scholar should have known 9 to zip. He couldn't make recess appointments. That wasn't much of a constitutional scholar that lost last week, was it?
I have to admit that the recess appointment argument is not one that I am able to talk about.
A constitutional scholar should have had knowledge, and the liberals like Ruth Bader Ginsburg found this constitutional scholar in violation of the Constitution last week. How about that?
So here's the thing. We're going to come back to the reason you invited me onto your show, which was to talk about Hobby Lobby.
Go ahead.
And
because you lost that one.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about recess appointments, there are a couple of things that I want to be clear on citing. I don't want to be going off the top of my head without being able to cite my sources and quote
Ruth
from
Bader Ginsburg said your constitutional scholar violated the Constitution last week.
She didn't say that.
It was 9-zip. It was unconstitutional. 9-zip.
Can we go back to what I'm here for?
You better to. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So here's the thing. I think where we got off track was when I said that the three female justices on the Supreme Court are in agreement that there is an undue burden placed upon. If you make minimum wage, the cost to get an IUD is about what you would make in a month.
Planned Parenthood would pay for it. Planned Parenthood would pay for that, and the government will pay for it. There's no financial burden at all.
That's not the case at all. I don't know where you're getting this. You are making this up.
I'm not.
Correct.
No, I'm not.
If I'm a woman who is working for minimum wage at a daycare center that has something to do with a church affiliation or whatever, and they're a closely held company of some kind that doesn't want to provide the medical care that my doctor provides for me.
Right.
I can't go to Planned Parenthood, or I can't go to.
Sure, you can.
I can go there and say I would like this, and they'll say, "Ma'am, here's what it costs. We do have a sliding fee in some
and you
places."
don't pay. A lot of times, poor women pay nothing.
A lot of times where poor women go to Planned Parenthood, the funding has been cut. The clinics have
the funding's gone up.
The funding,
$750 million. It's a 50% increase in Planned Parenthood the last 5 years. 50% increase.
Wait a minute.
By the federal government, it went from $450 million to $750 million under Obama. And when the Democrats were in charge for those 2 years, they jacked up the funding for Planned Parenthood, and it's been unaffected since.
I know what you're talking about, and you need to be clear about what you're talking about.
I know.
Those are funds that go to general health care. A woman who doesn't have a doctor and needs a checkup, she can go and there is funding for that.
Well, Jamila, let me do this. I got control of the microphone. I got to take a break. Can I get your website, and I'll send my listeners to your website, and we'll continue this debate some other time, because you're very good. You're very good in your position. What is your website?
We are at Secular Students, plural, secularstudents.org.
Okay.
And I completely disagree with you. History will show that I'm right, but I very much appreciate the time that you've had me on the show. Thank you.
You're very good for your position. We'll do it again. Thank you. 700 WLW. The dog in this fight, you understand what she's saying. I think Jamila did a wonderful job expressing her opinion. I hope I've done a wonderful job in expressing my opinion. I hope. But I want to hear from the ladies of the tri-state, other than Keith and Mike and Josh. I want to get to Keith and many others. But both sides are right from their perspective. That's why the decision was 5-4.